Coffee with Caregivers production costs are covered by a partnership with United Healthcare and the National Foster Parent Association. We receive no federal or state funding and depend on our constituents and viewers to help us achieve our goals to provide support and services that meet identified needs within our mission. We would like to welcome the viewers of Coffee with Caregivers to the family. The National Foster Parent Association offers several membership opportunities for individuals, child placing agencies, and state and local affiliates. You can join today or donate at nfpaonline.org.
Well, welcome to Tuesday morning's Coffee with Caregivers. So glad to have you here again, and we're looking forward to another good episode. I'm just looking at myself. Oh, um, I guess I just didn't do all the makeup like I try to do usually. So, I'm looking pretty old today. Darn it. But you know what? Some days I feel kind of older than I want to be too. So I know that some of you probably experience that more than you want to. I know that's kind of the feeling I've been getting for a while. And I know it's just a sign of the times and that sort of thing. But uh, wanting to rise and shine and be bright and happy and full of hope and joy every day is a dream. I get there most days, not always. And I hope that you're there today as well. Um, I'm going to show you my cup, and I got to turn it around because it's only written on one side. Love. Oops, I hate this thing. It's never shows right for me. Love, and it's pink. It's just such a pretty, special, delicate pink. My daughter gave me my oldest daughter gave me this one, and she said when she gave it to me, she said, "Mama, I know you like pink, and you're pretty in pink." And she said, "But it says love on there, and just want you to know that our family, not just me and my family, but all of my brothers and sisters and our families truly love you." Wow, it's like I can't hear that enough times, right? I guess that's human nature that we want to know that the love that we've given to our family has been felt um, and honored. I hope you get that back from your kids and from your grandkids. I usually have a little story or something to talk about at the beginning of these Coffee with Caregiver episodes, but I don't today because I want to really just get into visiting with our guest. And our guest is Dr. John DeGarmo. There he is.
Hello.
John. If for those of you who have watched a Coffee with Caregivers in the past, you've probably seen John. Um, uh, and hopefully you've seen John on his own Facebook presentations that he has. I want him to talk about that after a while because I want to make sure that everybody knows how they can get his expertise on a regular basis. And then we're not hogging them all by ourselves, right, John? We had told our audience that if they had some questions, sometimes they could, chat them in or send them to our info at NFPAonline.org website, and that we would do our best to answer some of those questions. And sometimes they're questions that are really specific to a certain, case or a certain thing. And I try to answer those offline, okay? Because they're not relevant necessarily to everybody else, and they're a little bit too much information sometimes to really put out there. But we got one the other day that I thought, you know what, this is a John DeGarmo question. I'm going to save that for when John's on next time. So First of all, before we get into that, I do want you to introduce yourself again, tell people what you think is important about you. And I know you have a cup to introduce, and then we'll get to the question.
Well, thank you, Irene. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to visit with you. Don't get to do it enough. I'm Dr. John DeGarmo, the founder and director of the Foster Care Institute, foster parent myself to over 60 plus kids. I've adopted 3 from the system. I'm really driven each day to make the system a better one, not only for the children, not only for the foster parents, but for those birth parents as well who are struggling with their own pain, their own anxiety, and for society in general. You know, we all know the system is a broken one, and it's always going to be broken in some way because it's run by broken people, all of us. And I just finished writing an article about reformed and always reforming. That's how I see foster, always reforming to meet the new challenges of the day. My coffee cup, well, as many people know, my wife is an Aussie and Australian, so she thrust this in my hand before I came on here. It's an Australian one, and you know, we are the children who have come through our home. You know, if you were to look at our family, you would see a colorful family, and we try to embrace all cultures, if you will, including that Australian heritage. So we have a really interesting melting pot, if you will. So I have here an Australian cup with some strawberry banana smoothie in it.
Nice. Very nice. That sounds great. I saw a thing on Facebook. I thought about your wife and for you because you lived down there for a while as well, about Australia. And it was about the scary animals and creatures and things that are indigenous to Australia. And I got to tell you, they were creepy and frightening. Some of those spiders were that big, and some of them were like that big, and then some of the snakes that were just like, oh my God.
That was my first introduction. When I moved down there, I think I just arrived, and you know, long 32-hour flight. Took a shower, and there was a spider the size of my hand on the shower wall. And I said, "What is that?" And my wife said, "Oh, it's just a house spider. Don't worry about it." You know, and I learned to check my shoes every morning when I got up, and check my pillow every night before I went to bed, because that's just the nature of the beast, so to speak.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, they had pictures of snakes and shoes, Crocs, mostly, you know, snakes coming up out of the toilet, coming out the light fixture in the ceiling, lizards and whatever, iguana type looking things, I guess they were, that were really huge. You know, one creature eating another creature, and it was really something. And I thought, okay, I've been to Sydney, but we stayed in Sydney the whole time we were in Australia, so I didn't get to go out and experience that. We're in a really nice hotel, and we didn't see anything like that when we were down there. But I'm glad, because that's what I'd have done.
We were in the outback. It was fun.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. Well, we were down there at a good time. I think it was 1985 in January, and which was summer, you know, for down there. And it was would it have been the bicentennial? Centennial?
It could have been. It could have been. It could have been. Right.
It was a lot of the streets in Sydney were closed, and they had all kinds of vendors that went all the way back to the very beginnings when the convicts were shipped over to populate the area. And you know, just how the people lived between then and 1985 was really interesting. It was very interesting. So I learned a lot at that point about Australia.
Yeah, they're very hardy people. They're tough, and they're also very family oriented as well. And they like to have fun. Boy, do they like to have fun.
Yeah, I think, you know, we were so out of our element. We went to the little place in the hotel that had like drinks and things, and it was in the afternoon. And yeah, and we wanted some iced tea. And so the lady first said, well, we really don't serve iced tea. We said, oh, okay. Well, she said, are you from America? And we said, yes. She said, well, we can make you some iced tea. I said, okay. So they came with these real tall, really slender, like cocktail glasses, right? And in the top came out celery and several other things that had been put in there. Like it was like it was going to be a Bloody Mary or something, but it was tea with ice in it. And then she brought these little like silver pewter little pitcher about, an inch and a half tall. And it was the liquid sugar. And I said, I never had liquid sugar. She said, what? That's all we have down here is liquid sugar if we're going to do this kind of thing. And it was just, it was so different, just those little things.
Sure.
And then we went to a Chinese restaurant one night, and nearly everything on the menu was made with lamb. I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
every lamb, every
lamb,
single way that you could cook it with Chinese flair, but it was all lamb. And so just really interesting, that the changes and how people lived was really cool.
Lamb is interesting. So my wife grew up in a place called Dubbo, New South Wales, and Dubbo is a huge lamb. They have a huge lamb factory there, and every Thanksgiving and Christmas here in America, we have lamb. Well, for the first 3 years, we ordered lamb at our very, very tiny, small little grocery store. And what do you know? Stamped right on it from Dubbo, New South Wales. So all the way from my wife's hometown to the hometown where we're living here in America.
Wow.
For several years. So, yep, lamb is a staple with our children.
Very much. Yeah. It was something we had rarely eaten. Now, my husband had, because his dad was a sheep shearer for many years. And so they would get lamb as part of their pay in order to eat when they were out on these shearing expeditions. So he had it, but it was not something that we had ever had. It was interesting that probably the main thing that for me was the harbor and the sunken ships from World War II. Because my dad served in the Navy on the USS San Juan and in the South Pacific, and they were bombed, and were able to sail, but very, 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 very slowly. And it took them 2 weeks to get to Sydney Harbor, where they could dry dock the ship and work on it. During that period of 2 weeks, my dad laid on a gurney next to another sailor who had been on one of the guns, had been manning one of the big guns on the ship that had gotten hit by a bomb and exploded. And he was very, very, very badly hurt. And my dad shared his blood with this man for 2 weeks to keep him alive.
Wow.
And so he told us a little about those things, and then how they got to be in Sydney for 6 months because it took 6 months to repair the ship. And what a wonderful time they had being there, and experiencing kind of the life of the folks in that area. Little side note that you might find interesting is 50 years from the time Dad was there. My mom answered the phone one day, and a gentleman asked said he was looking for a sailor by the name of Harold Hensey, who had served on the USS San Juan, and he just wondered if this might be the same person. And my mother said, well, yes. And so she got my dad, and she said she knew it had to something with the war, right? And so she said she watched his face, and just in a little bit of few words that could have been spoken to him, she said his face just kind of crumbled, and then he burst out in tears. And she couldn't understand what was going on. So after a while, my dad said, you talk to him. Well, this is the man whose life he saved by sharing his blood for 2 whole weeks. Wow. That almost killed my dad, because he was then laid up for almost a month in the hospital because they had to build him back up before he could even get out. And
Sure.
and this man shared with him how he had married and what a wonderful wife he had, and his children and his grandchildren, and he already had a few great grandkids at that point as well, and what a good life he had, and that he vowed that one day he was going to find Daddy and tell him thank you for making all that possible.
That's a great story.
Yeah. I mean, it sure helped us understand my dad a little better, after Mama had that talk with that other gentleman. Um, so when I think of Australia, I think of a lot of things that aren't just kangaroos and koalas, and all that, and the duck-billed platypus that I got to see in the zoo, and all those things. It's so much more for me that's personal. But anyway. Okay, so let me go into this question and what you think, how to answer it. This is kind of a global one because we know this happens a lot of places. The question is, where do you go when the issues are with the ones in control? We have a county worker who happens to be with a big county here in Ohio. He's blown up on us and the foster youth at times, been caught lying and jeopardizing others' safety and health. We keep getting shut down when we try to report. John, I hear it all the time.
Right.
We do that too much.
Are they referring to a caseworker or an agency?
They don't. It's a county worker.
Right.
So
First of all, when I hear things like
not a
that,
private agency worker. It's a county worker.
when I hear that a lot too, I really do, far too much. And first thing I do is I remind the caller, the person, say, well, you know what? These agencies, these caseworkers, they're human just like us. They have emotions just like us. Today's agencies truly are overworked, overwhelmed, under-resourced, under-supported. Right now, they're understaffed, underpaid, and they live a whole different kind of lifestyle that we can't really imagine because they've got everybody upset with them. The foster parents, the birth parents, the children sometimes, the court, maybe their supervisors, sometimes even their own families upset with them because these caseworkers agencies spend so much time. They get those phone calls and they got to go. They got to go take care of those kids. It can be late at night, or they might arrive home later on. I remember a caseworker I became good friends with. I think she was our caseworker for about 12 years. And we had developed a great relationship. She understood my jokes, which is really key for me. And she came to me one time. She said, John, I'm going to retire. I said, oh, no, why? She said, because my son says he never sees me. I said, I get it. I completely get it. So that's the first thing I remind people is, these people are just like us. They may be frustrated with how the system works as well. Sometimes caseworkers are upset with how the system works because they may not necessarily agree with with the judge's decision. To have a child maybe removed from a foster home, and move back for reunification. Sometimes they may disagree with that. The second thing I remind foster parents is this. I'm not a real estate agent, but I have some friends who are realtors, and I learned long ago that the three most important words for real estate agencies is location, location, location. Well, for foster parents, I believe the three most important words for them may be this: documentation, documentation, documentation. Foster parents have to document everything that happens in their home for a number of reasons.
Right.
I mean, when that child falls down and slips and skins their knee, foster parents have to document when it happened, where it happened, what did they do to treat it, how did they report it. And documentation needs to be in a non-biased, non-emotional, just the facts, so to speak. Remember the old show Dragnet? Just the facts. So if anything should arise, any questions should arise, they have that documentation, to say, well, this is how it was handled. This is how we address this. And that goes the same way with working with agencies. If foster parents are feeling frustrated with their service, they need to be documenting that. They need to say, well, I reached out to the supervisor, the agency on this date, and on this day, and on this day, and I still did not get a response. They need to have that in documentation. Or whatever it might be. I think documentation is so important. So they can go back and say, again, I tried this, I tried that, and this is how we were met. This is the result we got. This is the response that we had. And then the third thing is, I think it's essential. In fact, one of the webinars we have with the Foster Care Institute is caseworkers and foster parents working together. It's a team. It is a team. You know, when I have caseworkers, I'm the first to thank them. Hey, thank you. I'll phone them. I'll text them. We'll send them emails. We send them gift cards from time to time, letting them know how much we appreciate them. Because sometimes that might soften the edges of a relationship, so to speak. Sometimes it lets them know how appreciated they might be. You know, when so many of these caseworkers feel that, you know, that their job is an endless, tireless one, and it really is. So those are some things that I would suggest to begin with.
So when you have one, though, that you feel, you know, has been lying, and that's hurting the case,
Right.
or jeopardizing the safety of a child, and you try to report it to a supervisor, this lady doesn't say how far up the chain of command she's gone, right? But when let's say she has done her documentation and she has written down what's occurred and why she feels that these things are true, then, you know, how far up the ladder do you go? I know that some states have a ombudsman or a consumer
Right.
affairs office, or things that many times foster parents don't even know it is there because it's not promoted so that they know it's there. Um, but what do we do when the foster parent feels this frustrated because nobody seems to care that these things are happening, or to even research to see if it's true? It's just being ignored. I mean, where do we go? I always tell people you just keep going to the next supervisor and the next supervisor. I mean, we have families all the time who said, I've already done that. I've been to the head of the state agency already and nothing's happened. So now, you know, I've got an attorney and I'm talking to my state and my federal legislators. Well,
I
those
recall it.
things, then, you know, I just have to say, I know how frustrated you are, and if that's where you're at, then that's what you need to be. But I also know that it really angers the powers in the state and the agency if you go to the media, which they're all wanting to go to the media, and you go
Yes,
to
they
your
are.
legislators and they start getting letters from state legislators or congress people, um, and drawing attention to them, that I tell them, be aware of retaliation because it's real. I've lived it.
Yes,
I
yes.
know it's real.
Yeah. Oh, I lived it
And
too. I lived it
you
too.
know that it may end their fostering career.
Yes, you're
It
right. You're
could,
right.
you know.
You,
So
yes.
you have to decide how important the issue is ultimately.
You know, my wife and I have been there. What you just experienced, what you just expressed there. This is something very different. I remember we first moved back to Australia, and we had a 3-week-old baby, no house, no car, no job, just really my wife's faith and my dream career at the time. And we decided, you know, I need to get some type of job to keep this going here. There's nothing going on, no income coming in. So I started applying for a lot of teaching positions. This is back in the mid '90s, so no internet, right? No cell phones, right? If there were, they must have been those big hulky ones, but I certainly didn't have one. And I applied for numerous jobs, and I didn't hear back from any of them. So I decided to be the squeaky wheel, to be that squeaky wheel. So I remember pulling over the side of the road in the middle of Atlanta on I-75 busy highway to a gas station, to a payphone, put my 25-cent coin in there, called up a high school that I'd applied for, and they said, hey, Mr. DeGarmo, we're so glad you called. We sent you the wrong letter. We sent you a letter saying, you know, you did not get the job. We sent the congratulations letter to somebody else. We were not sure how we're going to handle it. Can you please come in tomorrow to meet with us because we want to offer you the job? If I had not been that squeaky wheel, I would have gotten back to that hotel room we were at, and that letter was sitting there right for me on the hotel desk that said, you know, sorry you didn't get the job. So I am not afraid to be the squeaky wheel. Now, and you just said it. Sometimes you got to go to the supervisor or the director. there have been times in my own experience where I have also gone above that, because I have been the advocate for that child that I was trying to adopt, and we were met with some standstills and some ones that I thought, this is not good. I understand the dangers here. But at the same time, as you mentioned, though, when you do that, sometimes you do place yourself in jeopardy of those agencies saying, we don't want this person as a foster parent. We don't want to work with this person because this person has gone behind our back, so to speak. They might feel
Right.
that sense of loyalty or relationship has been broken. And you're right. People are going to the media left and right. And right now they can pick up a phone and start complaining and arguing about everything they want on social media. And that hurts the relationships with the agencies and the foster parents. That hurts the relationships with the foster parents and the birth parents. So, it's a slippery slope. It's a fine line that you have to walk. You've got to say, all right, how, I truly firmly believe, and I know you are as well, that when these kids come to our home, they're our family, and we're the advocates for these children. We might be the only advocates. At the same time, I also have to think about how is putting my own family, what could the results, the implications for myself, my wife, and my own family. And we felt some lashback from time to time. It's a hard decision. So I would recommend that person, as I just said, and you said, documentation, make sure you're trying to form a healthy relationship with that caseworker. Sometimes use those flowery words. And thank you so much for all you're doing. I appreciate the work that you do. Is there anything I can do to help? To try to, I don't know, want to say, I guess, to impress them, or, to soften that edge, so to speak. But if you're not getting what you want sometimes, and that you need, or for the child needs, sometimes you do have to go to the supervisor. And if you do go a step higher and you hire that attorney, that husband, whatever it might be, as you just noted, note this, that you could end your foster parenting experience. I've seen it happen to others. And it's just one of those things that happens. Again, it's a flawed system whether we're all flawed in some way, and everybody is struggling in it. And as I said at the beginning, agencies are overworked, overwhelmed, understaffed, undersupported, and sometimes human emotions come up, and disagreements happen, and it's hard.
It is hard. There's no easy answers to anything in foster care. I mean, there just isn't.
No,
There isn't.
There isn't, Irene. And so many times, I host a question and answer session every Tuesday and Thursday night on one of my pages. And sometimes I say to these people, I wish I could give you a concrete answer, but the truth of the matter is this, and because there are no easy answers, and there's no one set answer. There's no one set answer so many times in foster parents, because when you have 425,000 children in the system across the nation, that means there's 425,000 different cases, different situations, different scenarios that can take place. So when I answer the questions, I often tell people, there's not one right answer for all of it.
Right. Well, I say the same thing, and I often sometimes say, there's more than one right answer.
Yes.
Sometimes there's more than one right answer that can get you the same place. It's just getting there in a different way. And so then people are arguing about that. It's not even about the outcome. It's more about how do we get to that outcome? But we think we got answers that will all get us there. So it's a communication becomes really important too, about how we talk about those things together. And, if we let ourselves get angry right away because we're already angry when we walk in or get on the phone, but to have some respect for the other opinion. And not that, and I think we're doing that in this country right now anyway. A lot of, if you don't think like I do, then you're something wrong with you. You're a bad person. Well, no, God made us all to be individual thinkers, right? And I always say there's usually several solutions to a question. It just depends on how you want to get there, and what the final thing is supposed to look like. But I grieve for people when they go ahead and contact the media, get in a lot of trouble because they did that, and the foster child's removed from their family. Then they start getting these calls about them that they're not doing well with their own kids, and they start getting investigated, and then they get, they're told that, well, you're a troublemaker, even though we can't prove anything, but this county's never going to place another child with you. You might as well quit. We get that a lot. And, working on a national level like you do, with all of the states having their own rules and regulations. Yes, they're all based on federal regs, but in federal policy, but each state can administer those in thousands of ways. And we can't give an answer that fits all. It's impossible.
Yes. Right.
And just like I alluded to, some states have an ombudsman for foster families. Some have a consumer affairs department or whatever. Others have for foster kids, but have nothing to do with the foster family. It's only if it's a foster kid. I mean, some states don't have anything yet, right? So, but federally, they are supposed to have a grievance procedure, right? All of those should be there. And when we talk to people, when they call us, oftentimes they'll say, what grievance procedure? I said, federally, your agency has to have one, and you are supposed to know what it is. Well, we've never been told anything.
Yes, I hear that a lot too.
Yeah. So if we can inform them at least about, we'll check about this and this and this, because federal law says those things do need to be in place. So they need to fess up. If they don't have it, that's something you can advocate for then, so they can come in compliance and it'd be beneficial to the caregivers at the same time. But make something constructive out of it instead of destructive.
I often preface my responses far too many times by saying there are 50 different states. That means there's 50 different ways of doing foster care. Each state has different agencies. Agencies might have different policies and practices and procedures as well. So that means there could be really over 100 different ways to do foster care in our nation. So I often tell people, you need to determine and figure out what your agency's policies are in this regard. And it's okay to ask. I have to say, well, I don't know what state you're in. I don't know what agency you're working with. The best thing you might do is just call up your caseworker or send an email saying, what is the policy in this fashion? Or what do I do in this regard? Mm-hmm. And there's also, and many foster parents also don't recognize that there are, I know the National Foster Parent Association has this on their website. There are rights for foster parents.
Right.
At the same time, there are also responsibilities as a foster parent.
Absolutely.
We just did a new webinar here at the Foster Care Institute, rights and responsibilities for foster parents, because I think they go hand in hand. Okay, here's your rights, but at the same time, you have this responsibility as a foster parent. And one of those responsibilities is to make sure that you are in communication with your caseworker, that you are giving the caseworker information. So they're not always asking you. We're trying to be, my wife and I try to be proactive. We're sending information to caseworker all the time.
Right.
When we come to the house.
Right. As you know, I live in Texas, and we have had for at least about probably 25 years now, our foster parent rights that each agency has to have published rights. But we also understood as a state that we needed to have responsibilities that went along with each of those. And so those have been published for at least 25 years in this state. So anybody who's looking to be a foster parent can see right away, yes, I have these rights, but below each one talks about the responsibilities that go along with that. And what we've been trying to do for a long time is to get our state to require that the rights for children in foster care also list responsibilities, because I think we fall very short in teaching our kids about responsibility.
Oh, on so many levels.
On many levels. And, yes, you have a right to a free education, but you have responsibility to when the bus driver drops you off, or, we drop you off at school, you don't go out the back door. Yes. You stay in school and you learn, right? You participate. So there are responsibilities to every right that the kids have, but we don't talk about those to them. It's not a part of what they have to read and sign, and I think we do such a disjustice to them, because I think they could be better prepared for whatever the next step is in their permanency if they had those kinds of requirements that are part of what they learn when they're in foster care.
Oh, it's so essential. So when they
It
transition out,
is.
they have an understanding of those responsibilities in
Yes,
society. In society, you know,
exactly.
and when in any child in our house, those are daily discussions with us. That's just part of our daily conversation. You know, if you do this, here is the consequence to everything that you do. There's a consequence to everything. If I pick this up and drop it, the consequence is going to fall on the ground. There's consequences. It doesn't mean it's necessarily good or bad. It's just the consequence. So we're always teaching the kids in our house the responsibilities you have in this household, within our family, with the caseworker, with your own family, in school, so that when they transition into society as an adult, they have a sense of personal responsibility.
Exactly.
So
So
they
why
don't
is it
end
so
at home.
hard to get lawmakers to see why that's important for youth? I don't get it. And we've been trying for probably 10, 12 years to get that.
You
And
know,
they just, it's all these kids just don't need all that. Oh, yes, they do.
I
They
always think,
desperately need it.
when I see a lawmaker, a legislator that is interested in foster care, genuinely interested, I will pick up that phone and I thank them personally. And I send them an email. In fact, I sent 3 earlier today. Because we know that foster care is something that people really, it's not in the forefront of people's discussion or thoughts. It's not, they're thinking about other things, bigger things, if you will. And I was that same way too, Irene. I was that same way too before I was a foster parent. I just had believed those myths and misconceptions and went on with life. So for those legislators that really have personal interest in it, I am so grateful. But there are many who are passing laws that it's just something to just sign off and, okay, I did that. Don't I look good? Get some pictures taken with it. It's not really their personal agenda. So there's a lot of misunderstanding about foster care that continues to exist to this day. And the media helps to perpetuate those myths and misunderstandings and misconceptions. So I think one of the reasons why lawmakers don't really understand is because they're not familiar with it. They're not aware of it. One of my personal sayings is awareness equals advocacy. When we become aware of something, we become a stronger advocate for it. One of the things I try to do is every day is try to bring awareness about foster care, foster parents, the children, the birth parents, the whole system. So society has a better understanding, because there can be some people say, you know what, I can't be a foster parent, but I sure can help a child in some way. I sure can be an advocate. And our legislators need that same understanding. How many times do we hear about legislators who do stuff in schools, and the school systems are crippled because the legislators don't have an understanding what's going on in the school? That's just how it is with so many things.
Well, it is. And, we've sometimes here we'll have, a whole new batch of freshman legislators, get it come and be elected to the House or some to the Senate. And we, as the advocate group, so we talk always and work together on most everything. But it'll be like, oh boy, our work's cut out for us. We've got like 22 new legislators that we have to start working with immediately to try to help them understand what even foster care is in the most primitive way. And because we've had these other guys that have been there, or ladies who maybe been there 10, 15, 20 years, right? And so, you call the office and say, oh, okay, what you need, because they know they trust what you're going to tell them, because you've built trust with them. And so it's always so much extra work on the part of the advocates when there's a new crop that comes in, especially if there's a large one, because you have to start over at square one.
Yes.
And pray that maybe they were able to hire a staff person, either from that person they were replacing or somebody else who was their foster care expert, or the person who heard their social services needs, right, and is well versed on it to where they can help them. But sometimes they don't have that, and so they really are, starting at square one. So you're right, it's a process, and we have to be diligent in it at all times,
And it can
because
be a
things
tiring.
change.
It can be a tiring one as well, because, as you said, when the new group comes in, you're almost teaching them
You
again.
are.
You're teaching them again. As you know, I went to Washington D.C. recently. I know you've been there lots, but I finally was able to get in there, and it was I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I can't wait to get back again. But I learned a few things about how the legislation works that I knew about, but I really didn't firmly embrace. I knew that that's how the court says how they do it. Oh, this is really how they do it.
Right.
It was an interesting process. I really enjoyed it. But they have so much going on. Those legislators, they have so much going on, and sometimes this is not their key focus. So those
For sure.
those
Because
legislators,
it's not a focus of their constituents.
right?
I mean, that again, they represent the people who elected them. So, they kind of set the tone too for what these, especially the people in Congress, will spend their time on. And that's why we, through our Council of State Affiliates, we work so hard with the state foster parent associations to help them understand that they've got to advocate strong in their states,
Right.
so that the people understand what the needs are. And when it's bigger than what the state can handle, it's got to go to the feds, that then there's some clout behind that. And that then the constituents can say to this congressional person, well, it is important to us now. Here's what we need you to be paying attention to. And it is that community to county to state to national pipeline that we have a lot of foster parents who understand being an advocate, for their own child, for the children that join their family, within their circle. And then many that on a county level will be part of a foster parent association or something. But there's so many that never even get to the point where they understand why it's important to be a member of or an active party to a state association, much less a national one.
I think it's important for foster parents to recognize and understand this, and even embrace this, that we as foster parents are the face of foster parenting, of foster care to our friends, to our family members, to those we work with, to those we go to church with, to those in our community. Because again, there's those many myths and misconceptions. So when somebody sees us as a foster parent, we represent foster care. Each of us represents foster care to somebody. So, that's why I tell foster parents, it's important that you recognize that many people, all they know about foster care is through you. As a foster parent, how you care for these children, how you work with the agency, how you care and co-partner with the birth parents, and at the same time, how you advocate for the system as well.
Right. That's absolutely the truth. And, I was just looking at my time, and I think we're actually at the end of it, John, but that is a perfect way to actually end this episode, I think, because the words you just said wrap it up absolutely well. Everything we do is being watched by somebody and seen by somebody. Every word we speak or every word we write is being heard or read by somebody. And now they're going to put their spin on it or whatever, but when they look at the quality of care, how you treat the children in your family, how you treat those birth parents, how you speak about that family, is all creating these impressions about who not only you are, but what this system is about. And I think the personal responsibility piece of that is really important. A university, now 20 years ago, did a great study, and they talked about where should you spend your money and your time recruiting new foster parents. And one of the things that stuck out huge in the study, in the research, was forget going to a community where a foster parent has been very upset with something that happened, that told everybody in their church, their bunco club, the Lions Club, everybody knew, the school, the teachers, because they talked about it. It was a negative experience.
Yes.
Don't even try for 2 years to recruit a foster family from that area, because they're not going to do it.
Like a fire going around and just
absolutely. So what we do and what we say and how we do it and how we say it is really important. because we can be harming the other people in our community that perhaps their children might need foster care, and we're not going to have families be able to step up in that community so the kids can stay in their own school and things like that because of what we did that poisoned the community.
Yes, so true. So very true.
So we have a huge responsibility. I think they always say foster parents are the best recruiters,
Yes,
and I agree with that, but they can also really dampen recruitment
they
based
can.
on how they've responded to something.
They can. And in every walk in society, there's a bad apple in every single barrel.
Absolutely.
We know there are, unfortunately, some bad foster parents. There's bad doctors, bad police officers, bad firefighters, bad teachers, bad parents, bad everything. But that one bad foster parent out of 99 others also can paint a very, very negative image about foster care in general. So that's why also foster parents, again, you are the face of foster parenting for everybody that they see, and they have in their mind what foster care is about, what the children are like, what the foster parents are like, because of what they see on the media or what they hear, the narrative, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that NFPA is working very, very hard to change that perspective, to change that narrative, and show the truth about foster parenting. How the vast majority of foster parents are wonderful, loving people who simply want to help a child in crisis. And how these children are just children who want to be cared for, want to be loved, children who have suffered from neglect, abandonment, trauma, whatever it might be.
Absolutely right. Well, John, thank you once again. I love to hear your words of wisdom, and I know that others enjoy hearing them too. So thank you for being on our show again.
Always a pleasure. Do it anytime you want. You know that.
All right. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
This episode is brought to you in partnership with our friends at United Healthcare. For more information about United Healthcare, please visit www.uhc.com.